Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Monday, December 27th. Happy Christmas after to everyone and Happy New Year in front of us. Hope you all had a lovely, happy, healthy weekend of Christmas. And now we're looking forward to not only the turning of the calendar over to 2022, but championship week in the fantasy football world. I am Michael Beller. I am joined, as always, by Jake Seeley. Jake, how was your holiday weekend, and are you in any championships?
Holiday weekend was great. Season sweepings, everybody, that's actually coming back soon. What is that? The 29th or the 30th? It comes back before the end of the year, right? Cobra Kai.
Oh,
you guys don't know? You guys
I've never seen it.
No, I thought it was early January, but if you're right, I'm excited, Jake.
Oh, it's next week then? Either way, it's coming back very soon. No, I got basically eliminated like every single I think I went 0 for 4 of advancing to the championship games. The worst one was the home league where I'm glad we're talking about this today, Beller, is kind of the theme of this show, but I should have sat Saquon Barkley, Cordero Patterson, and Deontay Johnson. And I should have started Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Who else? Rashad Penny, and there was one other player. That's, nobody really ever goes that far. The only one I really thought about benching was Saquon Barkley, but, that's 2021, man, isn't it, in a nutshell?
Jake, we had a long discussion about who we would start Amon-Ra St. Brown over in week 16 last
a
week.
week ago right here.
And I don't know. We might have to go ahead and do an accounting of who you actually did start over Amon-Ra St. Brown, because you might have went against your own advice.
No, because my voice at the time was if Jared Goff was at quarterback. Right. I dropped St. Brown into the 30s because of Tim. I've seen Tim Boyle play before. I was not expecting that. I had St. Brown way too low. But yes, that's what the life is of that. So who else was it? Oh, I should have trusted Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's not that big of a deal. Whatever.
Yeah, that happens.
For the first time in 7 weeks.
First time in a while. That's part of the reason why one of my teams is not playing, is because Amari Cooper a little too late after I was eliminated. Brandon Funston, you heard his voice already. He's here also. Funston, good Christmas, and are you in any championships?
I am not miserable. It was snowpocalypse here, as you saw with the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, yeah,
game.
Bears. Jealous.
Yeah.
And I was
I got the freaking AC on. I'm jealous.
There's snow everywhere. I was driving in it for much of 4 hours of it yesterday. So, yeah, but I'm a little bit bitter, a little bit grumpy. But, here I am. I made it.
Oh, man, no championships for any of us. I was my fantasy season actually ended entirely in week 15. I was knocked out of whatever playoffs I was in. I had the Cardinals in my survivor pool against the Lions. That obviously ended unceremoniously for me. I play in a different sort of like a fantasy survivor pool where we pick one QB, one running back, one receiver, and you can only use each player once.
Still alive
and the low scores cut. 2 weeks ago, I lost on the Cardinals against the Lions.
Oh.
Yeah,
would you have taken the Chargers? Because could you imagine making it all the way to 16 and getting bounced by the Chargers?
Yeah. Oh my God, I had the Eagles lined up for this week. I was all ready to take them. So yeah, my fantasy season ended. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, once it got to like week 13 or so, I just mapped out a little bit of if everything remains generally status quo, here's what I'll do. Because you've got teams you've got teams like the Cardinals, for example, who had a couple of usable spots. Or at least I thought they did.
No. The people who try to do that like in week 4, and they're like, I'm going to save this team for week 14. I'm like, dude, how much changes? How about just make it to week 8 before you start thinking about week 14?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely, if I get it, like I said, like week 13, week 14, then I'll just think about the next couple of weeks. But no, you can't do it way early in the season because crazy things happen. Crazy things happen, whether it's Survivor, whether it's fantasy, whether it's just straight up regular NFL. We know that, and we saw that in week 16. As you said, Jake, that's going to be the theme of this episode here. We are obviously catering to the championship-bound fantasy manager, because who else would we be catering to going into week 17? So what we're going to do, a little bit different of a style of a show for this episode. We are going to take a look back at the players who were great in week 16 and the players who were maybe surprising duds. For the great players, we're going to say, can you count on them? For example, Saquon Barkley on the dud side. Can you count on the great players to be great again in week 17? Can you still be starting them with confidence? Can you rely on the dud players to bounce back in week 17? Or maybe do you need to take what you saw in week 16 and apply it at face value and perhaps look in another direction? So that's what we're going to do on this episode. We'll get through as many players as we can over the next 40 minutes or so. So let's just jump right in, guys. I'm going to start with the good players, and we're going to start with the quarterbacks. Joe Burrow. How about this, you guys? We've been waiting for this all season. We've been waiting for this sort of volume for Joe Burrow all season, and he comes through with a monster performance for the Bengals against the Ravens. The first place Cincinnati Bengals, 525 yards, 4 touchdowns. He gets the the Chiefs in Week 17, and what could also be a really fun fantasy and real life game. Jake, Joe Burrow, your confidence level for him in Week 17 matchups?
Not going to be a little bit too much recency bias. I was really excited for Joe Burrow, honestly. I had him in a ton of DFS spots this past week. Was one of my favorite locks, and that's not the same this week. I'm not going to confidence level, if you gave me on a 1 to 10 scale, 6, maybe he could get me to 7 because he's a Joe Burrow, but we have to be honest about the games heading into this. He was one of my favorite trade away candidates because of the schedule, and before this game had one good game in 5. And you look at some of the opponents you mentioned, the Chargers, that was one of the games that he didn't do great against. The Chargers should have had a better game. I think San Francisco was the only one that he even topped 20. And then outside of that, had some single-digit performances. Look, I'm not benching Joe Burrow just for any Joe Schmo off the waiver wire. But I'd be a little bit concerned. The Chiefs' defense has been playing a lot better in the second half of the season. It has been a much less vulnerable pass defense. So I'm probably starting him. But, if he was my fill-in, if Lamar Jackson's coming back, I would go back to Lamar Jackson. And, depending on what your options are, I don't know that you have a ton, but he's going to be on the low end of the QB1 conversation, even coming off that game.
Yeah, I think I'll be pretty confidently at the, probably in the 7 to 10 range with Joe Burrow. I mean, I guess you can cut stats however you want.
Wait, rankings or your confidence level?
No, rankings.
Okay, I was going to say, that's a big confidence range. Like, I'm going to go 7 to a 10. So,
I'll say 7.5 to 8 on the confidence level.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at, so his completion rate's been awesome. He's over 300 yards in 3 of his last 4. The matchups, Kansas City. Beller, you always know this. What's the opening line on this game? Like, what's the over-under? Is there going to be a higher over-under across the league in Week 17 than this game?
I already want them to flex this to Monday night instead of the crap we get on Monday night.
What is
Cleveland, Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Yeah. Hey, it's not crap for all of us. Some of us have Pittsburgh Steelers last place in the AFC North bets from August that they really need the Browns to win. Really need the Browns to win.
I was going to say, it doesn't count when you
Chiefs minus 4.5, 49 is the total at BetMGM right now.
I bet you that gets into the 50s before the end of the week. So
it is not the highest total. The highest total is
that's what I was about to say.
Cowboys at 50.
Doesn't that tell you a little bit if Vegas is already not at 50? I mean, you're saying 50s because of the betting public, not because of Vegas. So that's what I'm saying. Is like,
I don't know.
A little bit of what my side of it is.
Is it extremely scary? Not necessarily. Is Joe Burrow?
No.
If you've been riding Joe Burrow,
I think it's like Jake said. Like if you've got Lamar coming back, you're maybe playing
but
Lamar.
That's why. Like the Ravens were rolling me out at corner this past week. That's why.
Would you play Lamar Jackson coming back off the street after 3 weeks?
I would play Burrow. I would still play Burrow, but I'm saying I think it has to be that level of player.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Baltimore's got the Rams.
Burrow.
That's I forget they get the Rams, but okay. I'm trying to think of like who else might be in the conversation that you could have. Like that's the problem. Justin Herbert didn't have a great game. I would play Justin Herbert, but I mean not a lot of people have that conversation to have. Here's one. I'll ask you this, Funston. If you got Burrow this is one where people waited on quarterbacks and might have taken 2, and I've seen some of these teams. Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson, that group of guys.
Let's throw Dak's stat line up here too, because he was someone who we wanted to talk about.
And Dak's got
Would Burrow
Arizona.
be over Dak?
Dak's got
Russ?
Arizona. Yeah.
Russ has got Detroit.
I know. Russ had Chicago last week too.
That was also snow.
Yeah, I know. But, supposedly Russ has those big hands. He handled it at Wisconsin. He's supposed to be able to handle a random snow game in Seattle. I probably, honestly, those guys might go pretty close to back in my rankings. But I think in the end, I would probably go Joe Burrow.
Dak Prescott, the 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, just eviscerating the Washington football team in the first half. It could have been 506 if the Cowboys needed it to be. Obviously, they didn't need it to be. That game well in hand by the end of the first quarter, let alone the end of the first half. All is well with Dak, Funston, after what we saw here?
I'm not going to – my confidence level is probably not quite as high as it is with Burrow. But, I mean, you look at – You look at Dallas, I mean, he's averaging right around 40 pass attempts. I was looking it up, right around 40 pass attempts for past 6 games. So the volume's there. The playmakers are there. The matchup isn't a death knell matchup. So, yeah, I mean, I'm feeling pretty confident. If I'm 7-5 to 8 on Joe Burrow, I'm probably 7 on Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would actually, even with the matchup, I would play Joe Burrow over Dak, mostly because he was 1 touchdown away from equating to like the 5 games of touchdowns before that. He had a 0, 1, 1, 1, and a 2 in the games before this. So it's just, yeah, sure, the yards, or you should say the attempts have been there. The yards haven't even been there because it's been mid-low 200s.
Yep.
So, yeah, it looked great for one game. I jokingly said, congratulations for the consolation teams if you have Dak Prescott. And the surprising amount of people still had him in, like, actual playoff games and still played him. So I wouldn't say you bench him against Arizona, but I would play Joe Burrow over him. And I would I would go back and forth for a while, Russell Wilson versus Dak Prescott. I don't think one game is enough to make me say everything's fixed with Dak Prescott. I would probably go Dak because of the ceiling versus Russ, but I think it's closer than people might just assume.
And I'll just chime in. Like, the ceiling with Dak is, I mean, he doesn't run anymore. Yesterday he had 21 rushing yards. That was the second highest of the
season.
Yeah, one rushing touchdown. This was a guy that, like, his first 3 years, I think he had 6 rushing touchdowns each of those seasons. So, like, that just lowers that ceiling that, we thought we had with Dak. So, yeah.
Let's take a look at some running backs, you guys. Let's start with Justin Jackson on this one. Obviously, he did his best Austin Eckler impression in place of Austin Eckler in the Chargers' shocking loss to the Houston Texans. 64 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, 98 yards, and 8 catches through the air. The Chargers get the Broncos in Week 17. Eckler probably clears COVID protocol and is back in Week 17, but we saw Justin Jackson in a shared role in Week 15 when Eckler was dealing with that ankle injury, play pretty well. He's not going to have the backfield to himself to the tune of 19 touches, Jake, but do you think there's enough here with Eckler coming off the ankle, coming off COVID, for Jackson to be maybe a flex consideration?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't risk it. Even that game before that where Josh Kelly was involved until he fumbled, still, that was 3 options, and that was Eckler not being 100%. Obviously, if we get all the way through Friday and Eckler is still limited on Friday, then you know what? You might get me into the flex conversation because they'll say, all right, we're not just going to go right back to Eckler getting his normal workload, which has never really been 85%. It's just if he's going to monopolize the backfield against Denver at home and, they're thinking playoff life on the line, they just – I know Jackson did what he just did. But we've seen these teams before. How many times have we had that conversation where I said, go down the list of the David Montgomerys and the Edwards-Helaire's, and we did it time and time and time again where the lead did well, Dalvin Cook, the guy comes back, and they go right back to the workload that they'd always seen and they always trust. So, again, we already saw what the best-case scenario of that split, I think, could be before this game 2 weeks ago. I just don't think I would risk Jackson. It's a very simple for me. Austin Eckler plays, you play him, nobody else. He's out, you play Justin Jackson, nobody else.
Yeah.
Nothing to add. I mean, it's not the Jets that they're playing. You can't get cute with like, oh yeah, the second running back on teams always does well against the Jets as well. It's like, no, this is a good matchup, and there's no reason to think that Austin Eckler.
Well, and to that point, Funston, we would usually say, well, you can probably trust the second running back against Houston until Houston finds a way to beat you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. You know who is playing the Jets in Week 17 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's talk about Ronald Jones for a second here. 20 carries, 65 yards, and a touchdown. Caught 2 passes for 16 yards. Week 17 gets the Jets. We'll be watching the way that this team's injury reports go because obviously we know all those injuries they suffered a week ago. Things could change for them coming into this Week 17 matchup. But Funston, Ronald Jones, you feeling all right about him in this Week 17 game with the Jets?
Yeah, this was like, this is what Bruce Arians said. Ronald Jones needs to, step up like Leonard Fournette did last year. And this is kind of like even when Leonard Fournette was bad, it was 65 yards and a touchdown, and maybe he's not getting the pass volume that Leonard Fournette does. Ronald Jones, absolutely. Against the Jets, there's just no question. The question is, are you in a 16-team league? Are you getting cute and chasing Keyshawn Vaughn? Because there is a second running back, as we mentioned, with the Jets that is always kind of in play. And Keyshawn Vaughn Could he get to 10 touches in this game? Could it be a touchdown? Could it be another 70 yards? Yeah, I think it could be.
Showed us he can rip off 55-yard touchdowns in week 16.
Exactly. Honestly, if you're telling me like Rex Burkhead against San Francisco or a Keyshawn Vaughn in a backup role against the Jets, that's a tough one for me.
Jake, take that and run with it, because we want to talk about Rex Burkhead too. 22 carries, 149 yards, and a pair of touchdowns in Houston's win over the Chargers. Where does he rank for you, I guess, versus someone like Keyshawn Vaughn, and just generally where you're going to be looking at Rex Burkhead in week 17?
So if anybody is a South Park fan and knows the episode of Scott Timmerman Must Die and the end where Cartman is licking his tears, I'm going to be licking the tears of everybody who lost their championship next week if they put Rex Burkhead in their lineup. Because
are you going to get Radiohead in there to watch you do that?
Yes. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
yes, I do.
I didn't want to go with how dark that episode got.
But that part is a little lighter.
That is a very heavy. Holy crap. Anyway, but yes, no, there's no way I'm starting Rex Burkhead. Meanie and I did of how far down the list would we push Saquon Barkley, and I skipped right past. Like, there's no way you're benching Saquon Barkley for Rex Burkhead, because there's no way you're turning to Rex Burkhead, because one game does not wash away the misery of this backfield for weeks on end. And as Funston mentioned, because they're facing San Francisco. Now, where you said I would go Vaughn, I don't know. I might just say, you know what, the volume, maybe Burkhead falls into the end zone. But that's the point, is where I'll at least agree with you, is we're having the conversation of Vaughn, backup running back, versus Burkhead, lead running back.
Yeah, and I didn't say it. I would for sure. I hemmed and hawed a little bit, and I'm not sure where I'd lie on that. But that's exactly the point. It's the conversation is legit on those two right now.
So crazy. I mean, this is just, we get into this every year, but I don't know, like Rex Burkhead and Keyshawn Vaughn, like this is 2021 totally wrapped up. Chase Edmonds, you guys took advantage of the James Conner absence in week 16 in a big way. 16 carries, 56 yards, 1 touchdown, 8 catches for 71 yards. Arizona and Dallas should be a fun game next week. Maybe James Conner is able to return for the Cardinals in this one. And they're in the playoffs, but they are a reeling team that could maybe get a feel good about ourselves, or could use a feel good about ourselves sort of win against the Cowboys in Dallas. Where are we feeling about Chase Edmonds going into week 17, Funston?
It's all dependent on Connor. I think what will happen is we will see Chase Edmonds kind of revert back to what he was at the beginning of the year, and which is he'll be more of the receiving down back and get some carries, but like I'm imagining ranking him, if James Connors is playing, is somewhere in that low RB3 range, so somewhere in the 25.
For Edmonds?
Yeah, I mean if Connor's playing, playing,
I'm going the opposite. I'm going with. I had Edmonds in front of Connor this week.
Oh, so did I.
Yeah, but I'm doing the exact same thing next week. Is because of the matchup. I'm going to go for the pass catcher and what I think should be a more up-paced game, and they need to be more aggressive. And the fact that Connor, even if he plays, I don't know what his health is. I'll admit, for the longest time, you were right. You kept saying Connor's going to get the touchdown. You're like, but I think going into this game, I would just, unless something different happens and we get different news towards the end of the week, I think I'm still going to have Edmonds over Connor this week. And for the person asking, no, that is the Nevada Wolfpack. I am scouting. I'm trying to scout and do the show. I'm scouting Carson Strong at the same time of doing the show, so I don't have to do extra work after the show.
See, this guy just doesn't rest. This guy doesn't rest, and that's why you love Jake Seeley.
Honestly, don't think. I was just going to say, I don't think Connor was ever really that close to playing, and I think what we'll find out this week is that heel's still bothering. So I'm not saying I won't start Chase Edmonds or eventually move him into the RB2 equation. But if he was really, if I'm wrong and he was really that close to playing last week and he's 100%, then I'm going to move Connor ahead of Edmonds.
Arizona's got to feel like they have to win out to win that division now, right? I mean, they could win it without winning out, but you can't have that mentality if you're them. You have to assume you need to win out to win the division. And suddenly, I mean, they've been looking all season like maybe we're getting the bye. At the very least, we're getting a home game against the 49ers or something.
They're not automatic.
No, they've clinched. They clinched the playoff spot by virtue of Minnesota's loss. They clinched.
I'm having a hard time remembering the last time they won a game.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
yeah, exactly. I'm Ron Minnesota's loss.
Yeah, I mean,
if
they win out,
they have clinched.
I don't know what did they split with the Rams?
They split with the Rams, yes.
Right. Okay, so then it comes down to conference, which they're losing. So they would have to win out, and the Rams would have to lose both.
Yeah. No, you mean division, not conference.
Yeah. No, but it would come down to the because the division would end up being the same at that point.
The division record would be tied also.
I'm predicting out their. I think their division record, because the Rams are 3-2. Oh no, so if they lost, I was going the backwards way. Yeah. So they would lose on that first. Yeah. Either way, they lose it. So, but the point is, Cardinals have to win out, and the Rams
have to win out. So maybe they would, if they think that we are a like markedly better team with James Conner, maybe they end up pushing James Conner. Is just where I'm getting with this, because I mean, it's way different. You're the 3 seed or whatever. You play San Francisco at home in the first round rather than being the 5 seed and going to Tampa or something like that, going to the Rams in the first round of the playoffs.
Speaking of
a whole
betting,
lot different for them.
Beller, this is why you don't parlay conference winners. It was a free $10 bet, everybody, just to be clear. Free $10 bet. I did 6 of the 8 divisions. The only one I'm going to miss is the NFC West. I got the other 5 right.
Oh my gosh. Well,
and I did it because
Did you pick Arizona?
No, I went plus money on the heavier. I went with Seattle. And I didn't think Seattle could, but I wanted to. It was a free bet, and I really pushed the odds up with that one.
Isn't trying to predict 6 division winners before the season starts pushing the odds enough?
I mean, honestly, exactly. No, I know, but I was looking at the payout. I mean, it was Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Kansas City, Dallas, and then there was one other. Tennessee, but they're still up in the air.
Dallas at the start of the season was plus. Dallas
I know they were, but I told you I was looking for the biggest payout. It was a free $10 bet.
All right.
What can I say?
I mean, that's
5 out of 6 feels pretty good anyway.
Feels really good.
This is why you don't do
really
it.
Good. Yeah, that's why maybe you just take the Rams next year. I'm thinking of the Rams. Sony Michel, 27 carries, 131 yards and a touchdown. Looks like maybe he's the guy more so than Darrell Henderson is the guy. I mean, is this as easy as it seems, Jake, with the Rams against the Ravens next week and Sony Michel?
It is, because Sean McVay is Mike Tomlin, and the fact of, like, as much as he talked up the split, if the concern was coming back is he going to go right back to Henderson, not so much the split. He likes his bell cow. He likes to trust one running back. The other person gets sprinkled in, but that was even before Henderson got hurt. Now Henderson's also questionable. If Henderson plays, he's still the backup. If Henderson's out, even if they activate Akers, there is no way on earth they are giving Akers the lead. They're hoping he's okay for the playoffs. They are not going to risk his life in a Week 17 game. So, yes, it is Michel, as long as Michel can stay healthy. Once the change was made, that was the biggest conversation we were having 2 weeks ago. Was the one game or the 1.5 games? He looked pretty good in the one game, but was that enough to usurp Henderson? And it was. So he is definitively the guy.
So then the question is, it's Baltimore. It's not only one running back's gone over 71 yards against them. Well,
that's why you only trust one running back.
Yeah. So I'm not saying So we trusted Sony Michel, but how much do we trust Sony Michel? I'm probably thinking he's
RB2.
the very back end of the RB2 class. Going to be
Rams.
where I've sort of had him the last few weeks, which has been 20.
Too low.
Yeah, too low. 21 to 24, something like that.
Devin Singletary, I think, could factor in there, guys. And this is going to be the last running back we talk about. Wasn't necessarily the prettiest game, but he did give you, 78 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown, touched the ball 17 times. Bills get a very friendly, soft matchup at home against Atlanta in Week 17. I mean, Devin Singletary, maybe he's just an RB2, Funston, but are you thinking twice about starting him, or is he just pretty much automatically in there?
Well, so here's the huge thing. As I looked it up, he's averaging 61 snaps over the last 3 games. You have to go all the way back to Week 1 before he's had more snaps than he's had in any of the last 3 games. So they are leaning on him now. He's getting reliable volume in the passing game now, which is huge with Josh Allen. Because they're going to want to throw the ball, so you need to have your running back be a part of that, and he's a part of that, and it's Atlanta. So I think you're talking RB2, and you're feeling good about it. I mean, look at the volume is what we talk about. The snaps is huge in the backfield. We've been kind of annoyed about that the whole year, but 61 snaps, average over 3 games. Jake, what's your nay?
What's my sigh for? What's my sigh for?
What's your sigh for here?
Because my sigh is Zach Moss active? Because the one thing he didn't get and the Zach Moss monopolized was the goal-to-go carries. That's my side. Like, he'll be an RB2 for me. It's just I would feel the confidence level. I would feel a lot better. I'd probably have him in the teens if there's no Zach Moss. If there is Zach Moss, then he's in the 20s. So that's really what it comes down to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's move on to the wide receiver position, you guys, and let's talk about T. Higgins, look at this game. 12 catches, 194, and 2 touchdowns. We've talked a little bit about this Bengals-Chiefs game already. So I guess what I want to get into here is, obviously, you're feeling pretty decent about the offenses on both sides of this game. Jake, is this sort of a free-for-all? Is this a start-everyone sort of game for you?
I wouldn't start Tyler Boyd. That's really what it comes down to, is that I was, to go back to the DFS conversation I was having, I was locking Joe Burrow everywhere. And then because of price point and all this, everybody knows the name Chase. I was like, I'm probably going to pivot to T. Higgins. The play was both of them, and even Tyler Boyd. And you could have just went bananas. But Boyd's more left off than not. And the one game that he showed up when they didn't was because they were facing great perimeter corners in the Broncos with Surtain and the rest. So that's where Boyd hit. Against Kansas City, again, probably playing Burrow to go back to that conversation. Chase and Higgins are definitely staying in my lineup. And at this point, how many weeks in a row do we have to say that the second half of the season has been Higgins over Chase?
Yeah.
But Boyd would be the one I'd be hesitant to stay out there with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be, I think that's going to be a really, really fantasy forward game between those two teams. And two teams that, still are both going to need those wins. Obviously different goals in mind with the wins, but two teams that are going to need that win. Devontae Adams, obviously he had a big game. Let's just really quickly, Funston, when next year you're sitting down 2022 rankings, if it's status quo and Devontae is still with Aaron Rodgers, is he your number one receiver or is Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, that's a good question. If it's the same in LA as well, I'm probably going Cooper Kupp. I don't know how that changes there, and then I'm just seeing volume upside, and you get the pristine conditions of SoFi Stadium versus, and yeah, I'm probably going Cooper Kupp, but that's all right. I'm going Cooper Kupp. Jake's going Devontae Adams.
Nope.
Oh, you're going with
year 3, Justin Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
Only because look. Jokes aside, we'll talk about this during the offseason. But it's just wide receivers just don't repeat. That's what I'm going with. I'm banking on
Devontae Adams has repeated. He's not going to be the wide receiver one,
ago?
But he's not going to be the wide receiver one. But
no, that's what I'm saying. As wide receiver one, I'm playing the odds here. I'm just playing the odds that wide receiver one does not equal wide receiver one the very next year. It's like 2 or 3. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're drafting wide receiver one, you just really want him to be no worse than wide receiver 4.
Yeah, of course. And Cooper Kupp would be the number 1 off the board next year. He's going to be, but I'm going to place my bets odds. That's what I'm playing the odds.
Really
Justin Jefferson.
Do you guys really think that for sure Cooper Kupp, if Adams is still on the same team as Aaron Rodgers,
well,
will
so I was
Kupp
looking it up.
be
Yes.
80%?
Look at how far. Do you know the gap is as big as it was when Kelsey was that giant gap of points per game, and Christian McCaffrey's year. The gap of Kupp over Adams and everybody else is enormous.
Yeah,
I think.
for the
Field
games
Yates
played,
was the one that.
it's the best
Field
PPR.
Yates tweeted it out. Kupp has more over second place than second place has over 10th.
Yeah, that's nuts.
But I was looking it up. It's like the best PPR season by a wide receiver ever. Like
In
it includes
history.
the Randy Moss 23 touchdown
23
year. So
touchdown.
Jerry Rice 1,800 yard. There's some sick seasons out there, and Cooper Kupp has the best one going right now. So it's hard to, kind of go away from that.
Yeah, Adams isn't even second on points per game this year.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel.
With his rushing.
Because of what he's doing as a runner. Totally crazy. And hey, Deebo Samuel, let's talk about him for a sec here. 9 for 159, 5 carries, 32 yards. Where's Deebo going to be in all this next season?
Yeah, the question is, that's like we're reading the tea leaves and listening to Shanahan talk about. Talk about is this role going to continue? Is the hybrid Debo a thing that's here to stay, or is he going back? Because he's a lot more interesting in this sort of Cordero Patterson role, even though he was killing it before that even came into fruition.
Yeah. Well, you get a little bit of that bonus that, even those 30 yards on the ground is a nice little shot in the arm for your fantasy production for sure. Let's get back to Week 17 for a second. 3 guys in Week 16 I want to run through here. Let's just ping-pong these back and forth. Jake, I'm going to give you Isaiah McKenzie, who had a huge game in Week 16. 11 catches, 12 targets, 125 and a touchdown. We know you can't count on this week in and week out, of course, from Isaiah McKenzie. No. The 12 targets are going to be an outlier for him, but Buffalo's offense seems like it's getting a little bit of its juice back. Atlanta matchup. Where does Isaiah McKenzie play for you, I suppose, is the right question to ask here.
Wide receiver 4. I think he'll still be in that conversation of, what the floor could be. Honestly, the floor isn't even so much the matchup as it is that they just might not need the volume. And that's really what it comes down to. He essentially replaced Gabriel Davis, who is out. For everybody that doesn't know, he and Cole Beasley are both out again because they weren't vaccinated. So they're both definitively out. So Isaiah McKenzie's battling with Emmanuel Sanders, and I would take McKenzie over Sanders just like we were taking Davis over Sanders. But it's the Falcons. I mean, this could be you can look at it both ways. You can say, well, Josh Allen's the reason they have 28 points. Or it could be 2 rushing touchdowns, one of them being Josh Allen on the ground, and all of a sudden you just don't need Isaiah McKenzie to get 12 targets. So that's what it comes down to. So I still think the floor is risky, but I think he's definitively in play.
Yeah, but he ran 51 slot.
He said bounce it back. You're not allowed to.
I know. I'm just saying. I think Isaiah McKenzie's worth talking about because if Cole Beasley's out and he ran 51 slot snaps, and we've seen Beasley be a compiler when he's in that role, I think he's probably a wide receiver 3 for me. That's all I want to say.
Do you play him above or below Byron Pringle, who had a big game in Week 16? But, of course, Travis Kelce out for the Chiefs in Week 16, should be back in Week 17.
Yeah, and Pringle had much aided by the 2 touchdowns. This was it was a touchdown game. The 7 catches, 75 yards is nice, but I expect him to mostly turn back into a pumpkin with Travis Kelce back in the offense, and we get back to what we know about the Chiefs. And how much was Byron Pringle, on our radar when we were just back to normalcy with the Chiefs? So, yeah. I mean, you might get lucky if you want to try to follow this, but I think it's a big risk, and I'd rather play Isaiah McKenzie.
All right, let's talk about your guy, Jake, really quick. Amon-Ra St. Brown, yet another big game. He's quarterback proof, this guy. He can do it with Tim Boyle. Top 20 receiver in Week 17?
I think he has to be pushing that conversation, the volume alone, and that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, I said it. I didn't start him. I wish I did. I had him way too low. I apologize to everybody out there. It came down to Tim Boyle, and it's the same reason. I mean, let's be honest. This could have gone as bad as this is the reason we didn't play Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay, and anybody else. That Jake Fromm was even at quarterback replacing Mike Glennon because it could be that bad. It was actually worse than Glennon, who came back in, and the offense was trash. That's what we have seen from Tim Boyle. So I say all to say was, yes, I was wrong, but that's where I think it. And yes, I would admit that I would go right back to him. Do I think it's going to be that good if it's still Tim Boyle? But Jared Goff should be back. At this point, Jared Goff, as crazy as to say, and we were saying it last week, Jared Goff under center, Amon-Ra St. Brown is top 25. By the way, I just realized this quarterback's 6'9" because Carson Strong. There's nobody worth scouting in this game. I can turn this game off. Let's get back to this.
Oh, my God. Holy Brock Osweiler, 6'9".
I know.
Jeez.
I was wondering why I look like a giant compared to everybody else.
Do you remember Dan McGuire, Mark McGuire's brother? He was a Seahawk. He was like 6'8" as well. Let's just say the 6'8" type quarterbacks, they don't really seem like they end up working out.
It's a long release time. Long time for that arm to get back and get rid of a football when you're 6'8", 6'9". Let's talk about tight ends really quick, you guys. 2 guys I want to talk about. Dalton Schultz, 8'9", 82 and a touchdown in Week 16. Week 17 against Arizona. Confidence level in him, Jake.
Arizona and the Patriots have been 2 of the toughest and worrisome matchups for tight ends. Of course, Dawson Knox scores yesterday, so everybody's going to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. But yeah, more often than not, they've been shutting down tight ends this year. So Schultz got involved because everybody, including an offensive lineman, got involved yesterday. So I don't expect that every given week, similar to Tyler Boyd, more often than not, he's the one left out of recent since everybody's been healthy. Still, it's tight end. I think he's going to be a low-end tight end 1, but still, that's what I've had him at for weeks is a low-end tight end 1.
Funston, let's go to your neck of the woods and Gerald Everett, who had a 4-catch, 68-yard, 1 touchdown game in Week 16, and now this matchup with the Lions in Week 17. Is he back in this tight end 1 class?
I think if you want to put him in the back end of the tight end 1 class, I think that's fair. The matchup's good. Pete Carroll weeks ago came out and said we need to get Gerald Everett going. We need to get him more involved. And, it hasn't been completely smooth sailing since then, but you can kind of notice a decided change in how they've used him and the volume started to get there. And he looked great. And, I think, yes, to answer your question, he's fair to be in the tight end 1 class, I think, this week.
All right, there we go. Let's run through the Week 16 studs. We're going to talk Week 16 duds in just a second. But first, let's talk about BlockFi. Cashback credit card rewards. So 2020. It's almost 2022, you guys. Why are you doing something that is so 2020? You can earn Bitcoin instead with BlockFi, and it's the world's first Bitcoin rewards credit card. Lets you earn an unlimited 1.5% in Bitcoin on all qualifying purchases. Grow your Bitcoin portfolio when you buy groceries, pay bills, fill up at the gas station, whatever it might be. You're going to earn 1.5% back in Bitcoin on all qualifying purchases. There are no reward limits. There's no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, just Bitcoin earned on every single qualifying purchase. BlockFi is a leader in crypto and was named to Forbes FinTech 50 list in 2021. Right now, our listeners are going to get a bonus of $25 in crypto after making their first purchase with the credit card when you sign up at blockfi.com/fantasy. That's a $25 bonus in crypto deposited right into your account, but you have to use our URL when you sign up, blockfi.com/fantasy. Not all are eligible. Geographic, regulatory, and underwriting restrictions apply. Fees and terms are subject to change. Additional terms of service can be found at BlockFi.com. BlockFi is a financial technology company. Banking services provided by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. All right, guys, let's look at the Week 16 duds and determine whether we think they bounce back in Week 17. We got fewer duds than we do studs, so we should be able to get through this with a pretty good pace. How about Matthew Stafford, you guys, who not only was a Week 16 dud, but has kind of been, even with Cooper Kupp doing his Cooper Kupp stuff, little hit or miss over the last, I want to say, month, 5 weeks or so here. Week 16 was ugly. 197 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. He does get that Week 17 Baltimore matchup that Joe Burrow just took advantage of in Week 16. So, Funston, feeling good about Stafford here?
I'm not just feeling good. I love the matchup, though. We're talking about Sonny Michel might have a hard time running the ball, and that's been the thing. Stafford's kind of been disappointing the last couple of weeks if you throw in the Seattle game where underwhelmed with 244 yards and didn't look great. And I think oftentimes he hasn't looked great when he's gotten under pressure a lot. And, Baltimore can bring the pressure, but I don't expect the Rams to be able to run. And they just, we know about the corners with Baltimore and how you can pick on them. You have Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp could have a huge game in this one, and I think he'll lean on him an awful lot. So I feel good. I'm not gonna slam him into the upper half of the QB1 range, but he is gonna slot in somewhere in the back end.
Well, then let's ask the question: would you start him or Joe Burrow?
Oh, hey now.
I almost said I am going to put him in the back end in the Joe Burrow range. So I don't. That's a great question. I might actually lean ever so slightly Joe Burrow.
I am going to. So I'm trying to find it as yours. That's also I was delaying the question because I was looking. No, because what you brought up, pressure rate. Baltimore Ravens since week 13, and that's about when I estimated when things started falling apart. They're bottom 5. The only teams getting a lower passing percentage rate is the Bears, Texans, Broncos, and Falcons. Those are the only teams lower than them, not getting to the quarterback. So Stafford over Burrow, week 17, doing it.
There you go. Where's Tom Brady for you guys? Obviously, again, Chris Godwin, that's not going to change, but maybe Mike Evans comes back for him in week 17. He gets this matchup with the Jets. Antonio Brown had a big first game back, going over 100 yards on 10 catches. Brady, I mean, if you survived week 16 with Brady in your lineup, I find it hard to believe, Jake, that you wouldn't be trotting him out there in week 17.
100%. Mostly the Mike Evans part. Mike Evans is back. Tom Brady might probably be over Matt Stafford, too. So you just got to keep Tom Brady out there. The past 2 games, and one of them was against the Saints. And the Saints, one is one of the toughest defenses to face, and then they just know they have a blueprint. And it's, one game that he's been able to really go off on them in the entire past couple seasons. So, I'm still playing Tom Brady. No question.
Yeah, I think you got to go ahead and trust him. Jalen Hurts, how about him, Funston? It wasn't like the worst game, especially after what they put up 3 points in the first half. So it ended up being like an okay fantasy game. The 2 carries for 7 yards is what I find interesting. I mean, that has to be an anomaly for him and just the way he plays. He's healthy. He should be back to all systems go against Washington next week, shouldn't he?
Yeah, and let's just remember that Washington was a team that he almost threw for 300 yards against and ran for 2 touchdowns against and had his best fantasy day of the season against. So, yeah, you go in expecting 40 yards on the ground as a floor just because he's coming off a game in which he had 7. That happens every once in a while. But I think that you got to go back to that mindset that, his floor is safe as a rusher, and he's actually looked pretty good as a passer the last a few weeks as well. So matchup's good. There's no reason that you would go away from starting him if you've been doing it all year long.
Jake, Saquon Barkley was someone you considered benching in Week 16. You probably wish that you did. 15 carries, 32 yards, 1 catch for -4 yards. Gets the Bears in Week 17. Yeah, look at that jersey down there behind you. Is the jersey going to still be out in such a way that you're starting him?
No, the jersey's there for remembering the good times. I'm trying to remember pre-2021, pre-injury 2020, honestly.
Yeah.
I'll give you this is the easy way to answer it. Chris and I made a list. We got 24 running backs in Week 17 we would start. 24 before we got to Saquon Barkley. That's almost, the entire league. There was some split. There was some timeshare back. If Teddy Bridgewater is at quarterback, we would start both Broncos running backs.
Yeah, sure. And how about those Broncos running backs? I mean, we can go to them too. Funston, Javonte Williams, ugly. 7 carries, 12 yards. Did have a touchdown. Melvin Gordon's game even worse, and that's not just because he didn't get the touchdown. I mean, both of them had an atrocious performance in Week 16 against the Raiders. How do you feel about these guys going into Week 17 against the Chargers?
Rex Burkhead. Can I just throw that name out there? I mean, this is the Chargers. I think this is what you call a get-right game for a rush offense.
Not if Drew Lock is under center.
Oh, come on.
I would only – no,
come on.
I'm only starting Javonte Williams.
Look, I like Davis Mills as well, but we just saw the Texans and Rex Burkhead go crazy. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if it's Drew Lock. I will be fine with the Denver running backs. So
not plural. There's no way I'm starting Melvin Gordon if Drew Lock is under center. He destroyed that offense mostly because he throws too damn much too.
How can you differentiate all of a sudden? We've been talking all year about how these guys are the same guys. They play the same role.
Because they're
suddenly you're throwing Melvin Gordon in.
Because it comes down to workload, and Javonte Williams has moved in front of him for the workload, and they're giving him the goal line carries. Melvin Gordon doesn't show up because he had negative points. Negative. It's like Javonte Williams' day was saved, and I don't want to start Javonte Williams as a lock. Are
you forgetting revenge game? Did you not? Did you not
yeah, 100%.
Melvin.
No. Are you forgetting how terrible Drew Lock is for this offense? Against the Raiders, who everybody in the world run. That is one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Drew Lock, 15 of 20 damn 2. I don't think they even run 45 plays in that game. Drew Lock is a murder weapon to an offense.
To his own offense. You know what else has been? The lack of Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Deontay Foreman, 9 carries, 17 yards, and a touchdown. How do you feel about him going into this matchup, Jake, against Miami in Week 17?
I feel semi-confident. Yeah, that's an ugly box score without the touchdown, but he's their lead running back. I would, Javonte Williams, yes, even with Drew Lock, to go back to that one. Mm-hmm. But I think Foreman's in play is what we've probably been ranking him as around the 20s. That's, fringy RB2, 3. Miami's middle of the road when it comes to running backs facing them, so I'm not that concerned. The A.J. Brown / Julio Jones both being back, it might help him a little bit to get him more a little balance, but that also hurts him at the same time of not getting 25 touches. So, yeah, he's a fringy RB2, 3.
Funston, we're going back out to Seattle for you for the wide receiver position. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Ugly game against the Bears for both of these guys. At least Metcalf got the touchdown, and he got it early, maybe giving you some hopes of what would be a big game, and then that just did not happen for him. Is all forgotten, all well, and you just throw these guys right back in there against the Lions in Week 17?
It's hard not to. I will say that we're probably going to have a snow game again next week. It's both the weather in Seattle, the showing snow like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, yeah, we'll have another potential snow game. And I honestly thought that, Russell, there were some inaccuracies in that game, and I'm wondering if that finger is affected by the cold a bit. And, but I don't know how you're not strongly considering DK and Tyler in this game given the matchup. I might have them down a little bit, but probably not out of the range of where you're just ending up throwing them in a flex at worst.
Yeah, it feels like you sort of have to do that. Maybe you have to do with Adam Thielen too, Jake. Made his return from the ankle injury, caught 3 passes for 40 yards, got the 3 targets, did limp off at one point because of the ankle. But, if he can play, he's going to play because the Vikings absolutely have to win both of their 2 remaining games to make the playoffs, and this one very tough at Green Bay. So if he can go, he will be out there. How far down the wide receiver list does he go for you?
He is way down the list. I would probably play Isaiah Mckenzie over him because mostly, if anybody, make sure you're tuning into Inside Injuries, follow their account, follow Virginia Zackus. They tweeted out yesterday morning, and I was watching, and I saw it, and this is actually why I moved Adam Thielen down. Not enough. They said would not trust him in this game. The injury he's coming back from points to a potential early exit. And that's exactly what happened. He came back in again, but as you saw, also threw his helmet a second time as he got hurt again. I would have to be in a pretty desperate, I just need to chase ceiling because he could always catch 2 touchdowns, but I would be chasing ceiling, definitely not a floor. There's no certainty of a floor. The floor is 0. Floor is lava with Adam Thielen.
I wouldn't be surprised if they used him like that, almost like how you see like the Buccaneers use Gronk, where it's Jefferson and KJ Osborne in between the 20s, and then they get Thielen in there in the red zone just because of how dangerous he is for them in the red zone and how much he means to their team once they get in close to the goal line. They have to. The Vikings are in a situation where they went out and don't make the playoffs still, so they absolutely need these games. One loss, I believe, eliminates them because just the tiebreakers and blah blah blah. They can't catch Eagles or 49ers or whoever it would be. So they got to win this game against Green Bay, and then they get the Bears at home in Week 18, which would maybe be a little bit easier of a matchup than Week 17 against Green Bay. How about Terry McLaurin? Funston, 3 for 40 on 6 targets. It's been an ugly year for him, and again, it feels like the way your team is constructed, if you have Terry McLaurin, maybe boxes you into a corner where you have to play him. But how much confidence could you have in him? And I get, could throw like Isaiah Mckenzie versus Terry McLaurin. Could you go that far down the list?
Yes, you could. We're talking about I'm looking at his game log right now. Other than one game where he had 100 yards and a touchdown, he's been no touchdown and under 60 yards in 7 of his last 8, excluding that one game. And there was hits and misses before that as well in the first half of the season. So, yes, if you're going to play Terry McLaurin in your championship game and you get 2 catches for 40 yards, you get what you get and you don't get upset because that's been the line.
You'll get nothing and like it.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Absolutely. I'll tell you right now, I would play if no Cole Beasley, I'm playing Isaiah McKenzie over Terry McLaurin.
Well, also look at who Terry is facing.
Darius
Slay.
Philly.
Slay.
By the way, 2 weeks ago, it's 2 catches, 51 yards against Philly.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would be surprised to see a similar performance. Man, where's Terry McLaurin's going to be a fascinating 2022 rank? Because we've seen the good and we've seen the bad, and we know that this team, what are they going to do at the quarterback position in 2022? Terry McLaurin's going to be an interesting guy.
It can't be Taylor Heineke. It can't be Taylor Heineke.
I got to tell you who it's going to be. They're going to be the ones left looking around, and they're going to be the Jimmy Garoppolo team.
That would be okay. I'd be back in on Terry McLaurin if that was the case.
That would be too. That's just you get your floor guy.
Yep.
You get your
floor guy. Keenan Allen. I want to talk about him too, you guys. Again, you're starting Keenan Allen. There's no question about that. But it was an ugly game, really, for a lot of the Chargers in Week 16. How good do you feel about Keenan Allen, Jake, in Week 17 against the Broncos?
Actually better, because that's what the Broncos look with Tyler Boyd. I brought that up earlier in the show. The Broncos outside, but fortunately Keenan Allen dips underneath a lot. That's his game. That's where he's going to do. So, of course, you would assume Broncos try to bring coverage over, maybe Surtain spend some time on him. But, whether it's Mike Williams or Joshua Palmer, whoever it was, Keenan Allen just doesn't spend that much time outside. So I feel fine about it. There's no way on earth I'm benching Keenan Allen in my championship game. No way.
Yeah. No way. I agree with that completely. I think Chase Claypool, however, is a different discussion. Funston against the Browns. We know what that matchup can be like for a lot of receivers. Claypool's been an up-and-down guy all season. Where's he at for you next week?
He's probably ahead of Terry McLaurin, but down the list. Again, we are in Week 16. We're talking about a guy who has one touchdown, 100-yard game. He's had some decent 80, 90-yard games, but a lot of them are 50, 40, and again, 1 touchdown. And with this Cleveland matchup earlier in the year, 4 catches, 45 yards, no touchdown. That's what you have to set your expectations for with Chase Claypool. If you play him, sure, you can still imagine that there's more upside, but it is probably less upside than what we're kind of predisposed to imagine there is with Chase Claypool after what he did his rookie season.
Okay, guys, 2 more Week 16 duds I want to talk about. We've got enough time to hear from both of you on both of these guys. It's 1 receiver and 1 tight end. DJ Moore, again, another guy who, similar to Terry McLaurin, it's just been an ugly season. And It's partly his fault, I suppose. It's definitely quarterback fault. It's definitely offense fault. You see Jake shaking his head. 5 catches for 55 yards in Week 16. Brutal matchup with the Saints in Week 17. Jake, how strong is that head shake? Is this like a almost no matter what situation with DJ Moore?
I would go back to Terry McLaurin because I would just chase the ceiling. This is gross. Mostly because, yes, the matchup. Of course, the Saints lose Lattimore and somebody else tonight game, like that would kind of change a little bit. But one thing that wouldn't change is Steve Spurrier, Matt Rule is running this team and switching the quarterbacks throughout the game. And not even with like a logical sense. It's like he goes to Sam Darnold, who gets him all the way downfield, and then Cam comes in the goal line, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. But then it doesn't carry out like that for the rest. He still was switching back and forth just like when he felt like it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And to be honest, if you said Sam Darnold was starting Week 17, I would say start DJ Moore because the volume at the beginning of the season was like Sam Darnold targeted him and nobody else. But if Cam Newton's the starter and this is a split quarterback situation, there's no way. I am looking to try to find ways to keep DJ Moore on my – and I say keep because I didn't want to start him last week either.
Yeah, I will just say, though, I'm playing DJ Moore over Terry McLaurin and Chase Claypool because the volume is
over
still
Claypool. I don't think I would go McLaurin. I would just chase the
difference is that DJ Moore, because of the volume, he's still getting volume. He's had over 11
targets in Week
10
16,
targets in 4 straight games, 10-plus targets. So he gets you 5 for 55, where Terry McLaurin gets you like 2 for 55.
That's why I said the ceiling. Mm-hmm. That's why I said the ceiling.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm playing Moore over them because I feel like the ceiling is better.
Yeah, Moore.
Get a few...
Oh no! See, I think Moore's the floor, and McLaurin's the ceiling. That's my opinion.
I just haven't. The ceiling has been, McLaurin has not visited the ceiling in a mighty.
I know what you're saying. You're saying McLaurin's ceiling is like right here.
Yeah.
I always call it like the being John Malkovich, the 7.5 floor. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
Like
no, I haven't.
This floor, it's like 5 foot
you got to see
high. You have to bend over to walk around in it. Yeah, that's
It's like the people with the Christmas movie stuff. I don't have to just because I have movie takes and ranks, I don't have to see every movie in existence.
Well, that's true, but being John Malkovich is a good movie.
Yeah, if a movie's good, we're just giving you a recommendation.
Yeah,
you might want to
it's a good movie.
Okay.
I'm not saying go watch it later tonight, but
Yeah, but it was like a 1 to 10.
Aren't you taking some time off finally after the football season ends?
What is that?
Well, I'm just saying you'll have some time to devote 2
no,
hours to being
scale
John
1 to
Malkovich.
10. How much of a watch is it? On a 1 to
8.
10. More than 4 Christmases that Nando's trying to shove down my throat?
100% yes.
I love 4 Christmases, but you watch it at one time of the year. Like being John
exactly.
Malkovich, you can
That
watch
time's
it any
passed.
time of the year.
No, but if I haven't seen either.
And I will say for you, Jake,
I would say the last
I would
day to
say
watch
for you, for where in your wheelhouse, I would say it's a 6.5. But for me, I'm more with Beller. It's like a 7.5 to 8.
Yeah. Also, 4 Christmases,
you know what else
gotta
is a 6.5?
put a table for like 10.5 months, and then you can watch it.
Matrix Resurrections. Actually, that was like a 5.5, 6.
Oh,
yeah, no good.
Sorry to disappoint. It is. Oof.
Go
read my tweet.
I was looking to carve some time out to watch it this week.
I'll say it's at least better than Old, which is like a 1. Oh my God, that was the most miserable, awfully written, acted / oh my God, do not watch that movie, everybody.
That's
I've never even heard of
M.
it.
Night Shyamalan, where they're
Yes, the Shyamalan one where they go to the
yeah,
beach and they
yeah,
all
yeah,
age super
yeah,
fast. All you need to do,
yeah.
go watch Ryan George pitch meeting. It's 8 minutes long. It is better than the entire movie. Well, yeah, I'm also because it's only 8 minutes, but that's
Yeah,
all you need
there
to
you
go
go.
watch it. Trust me, it's the best thing to watch.
All right. Rob Gronkowski is a little bit old, right? And he should have taken advantage. At least we thought maybe he could. No Mike Evans, obviously. No Chris Godwin. 2 targets. 1 for 23 is like, he's getting. This is sort of the Gronkian way these days, but only 2 targets was really a letdown in Week 16. What are we thinking Week 17, Funston, for Gronk against the Jets?
Yeah, I think with Gronk, it's kind of like he is better served to have the Mike Evanses and the guys out there, and make him less of the target. And so I think, you could be a little bit concerned if it's just what we saw this last week. It's Antonio Brown and Gronkowski as like the 2 threats in the passing game. But if you can get Mike Evans back, I think I'm feeling a lot better about Gronkowski and also have him slotted in my tight end 1 class.
He'd be there even without. I mean, it's Gronkowski.
Yeah, he would be. I mean, he'll be slotted in the upper half of my tight end 1 class. I should say.
Yeah, and that's certainly fair. And also, Brady was only 30 attempts in that game. It was also not the biggest Brady game as we already talked about.
Right. It's if Brady and Gronk against the Jets, though, right? There's just even though they're not on the Patriots, something just sounds right about that. Something sounds right there.
That's right.
For these two guys going up against the New York Jets in Week 17. That's going to do it for this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks to all of you for joining us, not only on this episode, but this is the last this style of format for our Monday episode for the 2021 season. So thanks to all of you for being with us all season long as we have gone through our week previous wrap-ups and looking ahead to the next week. It's been a lot of fun for us on these Monday episodes, and we couldn't do without you. So thank you to all of you for joining us all season. For Jake and Funston, I am Michael Beller. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you soon. See you.